This morning is a special morning for us. We had scheduled Congressman Bridenstine to be in the service and speak for us this morning. We were so excited to be able to have him come. And just this past week, I was in Washington, D.C. They had asked me to come out and pray at a prayer breakfast there in one of the Senate halls. And Lisa and I were able to do that, and we got to meet with Congressman Bridenstine. In the process, he shared with us that he has had several death threats upon his life. Right now is just a crazy time with our politicians, and with the shooting that happened there in Arlington, and just the things that went on. The Capitol Police had informed him or requested that he not make any public speeches. And so I was severely disappointed to get that news. But it was great to be able to meet him and to sit in his office and talk with him and hear his heart. At the end of our conversation, I just asked if I could pray with him, and we joined hands there in his office, and I just prayed for God's blessing upon him and what he is going through, and protection upon him and his family. And in the process of that, he requested that one of his staff members here in Tulsa, Gabe Sherman, speak. Gabe's the one that we'd been in contact with, and I liked that suggestion, and he assured me that Gabe was a fine young man, as I'd already known from talking with him on the phone. And so I'm excited to have Gabe come up and share with us this morning. I'll let Gabe tell you about his life and give you a little bit of background, but I want you guys to give him the same attention that you would give me or Congressman Bridenstine, and help me welcome this morning Gabe Sherman. Come on up, Gabe.
Thank you, Pastor. I did. Can you guys hear me okay? All right, very good. Well, I'm just really grateful that Pastor Goins didn't say that he was completely disappointed that you were stuck with me this morning as the B team. That was very gracious of him. And Mary, something that you said really stood out to me. My wife will come to me from time to time, and she's a self-described, I'm an ideas person. I just need somebody to make my ideas work, right? And usually that becomes me. And so what I'm grateful for is that you had a vision for something like the coffee bunker, and you have enlisted great people around you to help make that vision a reality. And at our office, I'm the district director for Congressman Jim Bridenstine, so I travel all over in the district and across the state, and I lead our team and lead the outreach and the service and the communication focuses for our office. But the coffee bunker, in dealing with veterans, the coffee bunker is one of those places where over and over and over again, we hear success stories. And so, church, can I just tell you right now, I was sitting in that chair, and when Pastor Goins said a $10,000 check, I about fell out of my chair. You guys are a generous, generous people. Showing generosity is, I believe, one of the key things in representing Christ to the world, and you have done that this morning, and you deserve a round of applause. So clap for yourselves with me real quick, will you? That right there is just an incredible thing, and that's a story that's going to touch countless lives, and so good on you for what you did. So I'm just going to tell you, if it's okay with you, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I got to know the congressman. I'll tell you a little bit about how I see things in Washington, D.C. right now, and then I want to challenge you as Christians to really embrace your role in your country right now. Can I do that for you? Can I do that? Okay. So I got to know Congressman Bridenstine. I was selling advertising, okay? I was one of those advertising sales guys. When I came out of college, I became a car sales guy. So you guys can all laugh about that and say, ooh, yuck, we don't believe anything that he says for the rest of this time. But I was one of those guys. I moved into advertising sales, and I was selling outdoor advertising, and I got a phone call, and I missed the phone call, but a receptionist got it, and she wrote out a note, and it said, you need to go see this guy named Jim Bridenstine, or she couldn't even spell his last name, it just scribbled on a notepad, right? He's out at the Tulsa Air and Space Museum. So I said, great, I'd love to sell anybody advertising, especially that guy. So I go out to meet with Jim Bridenstine at the time, not knowing anything about him, never having met him, just going out, just a typical sales call for me. So I go out and I go into the Air and Space Museum. I'd never been there before. And I walk into his office, and he's a combat veteran of both Iraq and Afghanistan. He's a Navy pilot by trade. 9 years active duty in the United States Navy, flew combat off of the USS Abraham Lincoln, both in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so whenever I walked into his office, if anybody, are you guys friends with any pilots, or do we have any pilots in the room? You know a pilot? If you know a pilot, they keep little models of all the planes that they've flown. And so I walk into his office, and here are all of these models lined up, everything from his trainers to the F-18s that he flew at Top Gun, right? I mean, I'm looking at all of it. And so I'm thinking, wow, this guy is impressive. He's got a propeller hung up on the wall. He's got an actual tail hook off of an aircraft that was flying on an aircraft carrier, and he's got it set up in his office. If you ever tried to pick up a tail hook, don't. You'll throw out your back, okay? It's a bad deal. They're massively heavy. So I'm just taking in all of these amazing things. I'm thinking, this must be a really impressive guy. Sit down, ask him some questions, talk to him about the museum, become even more impressed with who he is. But this is a combat veteran. I find that out. I'm like, this guy, he's done it all. So we go walking through the Air and Space Museum, and if you've ever been out there, there's a lot of different exhibits. Some of them, airplanes parked in the hangar, super, super cool. Others of them just history, lots of great stories that are being told. And then there was a kids exhibit upstairs. And what was hilarious is here I am with a combat veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan. This guy has landed on aircraft carriers at night, which is something I can't even imagine doing. And we go upstairs, and there's this kids exhibit, and it's a bed of nails. Have you ever seen a bed of nails exhibit? You lay down on it, you push the button, nails come up, they lift you up, and they set you down. It sounds really neat, like a bed of nails, but whenever you watch it, it's like, oh, okay, that's all? And he's like, you got to check this out. And so he jumps up on there, and he's just doing this bed of nails thing, looking at me, and I'm like, yeah, man, whatever it takes to buy you advertising. That looks really cool. Let's do that. And so it was at that moment that I realized this is just a very normal guy, right? He's done all these tremendous things. He served his country, but he's just a very real guy. And so we go throughout the Air and Space Museum. About a week later, he didn't buy advertising from me that day, but he called me about a week later, and he said, hey, not ready to buy yet, but I need a marketing director over here at the Air and Space Museum, and I'd like you to consider taking the job. It's kind of a really quick process to go meet the guy on a sales call and then he'd be asking me to take a job. But at the end of that sales call, we both sat down and prayed about the Tulsa Air and Space Museum, about whether this advertising was right for them or not, and whether it would actually help them achieve their objectives as an institution. And so that time in prayer right there kind of solidified our relationship moving forward. And so when he asked me to come to work for him, I said, well, no, you can't afford me, but I appreciate that. And then he called me about 2 weeks later. And then he called me a week after that. And finally I said, all right, man, I'm in. Like, let's go to work. So we went to work together at the Air and Space Museum. We're there together for about a year and a half. Then he got he joined the Navy Reserves, got some orders to fly counter-drug missions down in Central and South America. So he went and did that. I went back into the advertising world. And then in 2011, he called me and he said, hey, I think I'm going to run for Congress. Would you help? And I said, sure. I've never done that. Have you ever done that? Nope, I've never done that. Okay, well, what do we do? I don't know, but I think we do these things first. Okay, let's go do that. A year and a half later, we won a primary, and then we won a general election, and we've been in Congress for 4.5 years. And so I want to tell you, every day at the Tulsa Air and Space Museum, Jim and I met at 7 a.m. for a morning devotion. It's just part of the way that we started our day. And I'm going to tell you that the Word of God is still alive and well in the 1st District of Oklahoma with the member of Congress that you guys have. It's something that it is a priority of his each and every day, and it's something that guides his decision-making process, and it guides us as a staff. So you guys did something right by electing that man to Congress because he's a Jesus guy through and through. So I want to tell you a little bit about my time with Jim in Congress over the last 4.5 years. Going into a job like that you've never done before, you have a lot to learn, right? You have a lot to learn. And you kind of go into it saying, okay, how much do I have to learn? You don't even know till you show up, and then you show up and you realize, man, I have a ton to learn. So some of the things that I have learned here real quickly in that last 4.5 years. Number one, guess what? We live in the greatest country in the world. We live in the greatest country in the world. Does our country have problems? You bet it does. But it is still the greatest country in the world. And I'm going to tell you that. That has never been truer. It's never made more sense to me than whenever I took this job and started working and started seeing what was happening in Washington, D.C., seeing what was happening here at home, seeing the people that serve in our military, seeing the people that selflessly serve their constituents here, and seeing the way that we operate as a nation. While not always perfect, I wouldn't trade it for anything. You live in the greatest country in the world, and as we move up to the 4th of July, you need to know that, okay? The other thing is our country has problems. Pastor Goins mentioned it. Our country has problems, right? I learned that very quickly as well. There are things that are going on that definitely need to change, right? The care for our veterans is one of them. The care for our veterans is one of them. And you look at a lot of the changes that have happened in the last 4.5 years since I've been there, I'm gonna tell you, we're moving in a better direction, but we've got so much further to go, so much further to go. And so I look at some of just the broken processes here in the United States, and man, the veterans pay, unfortunately, they get hurt a lot. And so there are some things that have got to change. Greatest country in the world, but the country has problems. I'm gonna tell you, you have some of the most courageous people in the world serving you. And I'm talking about our veterans. One of the cool things about my jobs is I get to sit down and I get to spend time with veterans almost on a daily basis. And I'm gonna tell you, these men and women love this country and they love serving you. And so respecting them and embracing them, especially around times like the 4th of July, but year round, whenever you come into contact with them. Next time you see somebody, and a lot of veterans do this and I love it because it helps me kind of notice them, is they'll wear a hat that talks about where they served. Next time you see somebody like that, stop and thank them. Just stop and thank them, right? It might be awkward for you, and that's okay, because guess what they've done? They put their life on the line to serve you and to make sure that you have the life that you have today and the freedoms that you have today. Go out of your way, get a little uncomfortable, and thank them. And it'll make such a big difference in their day and in your day, okay? Thank those people. We have some courageous people that serve you. Members of Congress, you guys have seen this. Politicians take a beating. They're easy targets, right? I mean, there's somebody who you can always say bad things about. You can say all you want about politicians. However, it takes courage to serve. I'm gonna tell you, it does. Pastor Goins mentioned some things that are going on, and I wish I could tell you that was the first time that's ever happened, but it takes some courage to serve. And so, I think courage is one of those things we should be really excited about seeing in our country. At the same time, I also learned that we lack a lot of courage in some areas, that we lack political will and political courage in some areas to actually get things done and move us in a direction that is closer to the founding that this country was put together on. And so I think there is a much needed courage that's still lacking in the United States of America. So do we have some courageous people? You bet we do, some of the best in the world. Do we need more courage as a nation? Yes, I've learned that we absolutely need more courage as a nation. But this is the biggest thing that I've learned, and I want to share it. This is going to be what I talk about for the rest of today. The biggest thing that I've learned over the last 4.5 years is that the solutions to the problems that our country faces are not going to come from Washington, D.C. I'm going to say that again. The solutions to the problems that our country is facing are not going to come from Washington, D.C., okay? It's not going to happen. If you're sitting here today and you think, well, we just elected a president, he's going to fix it. He's not. If you're sitting here today and you think, I've sent a great member of Congress up there, he's gonna fix it. He's not. They're gonna work really hard, right? They're gonna do what they believe, they're gonna work really hard, but they are not alone going to fix what's going on in our country. And as long as we sit back and we look to Washington, D.C. to fix everything that's wrong with this country, we are not gonna see any difference. We're not gonna see it. It's not that we should give up and not send great people. It's not that we shouldn't get engaged in the political process and be a part of it, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. It's that you have to understand there is a level of personal responsibility that each and every one of us have to take if we want to see our country go in the direction we believe it should. And I'm going to make some assumptions here this morning. I'm going to make an assumption that we in this room want to see our country move in a more godly direction. Amen? Okay, so we're going to all say we're on the same page there. And if we want that to happen, it's not going to happen by sitting back and waiting for Washington, D.C. to fix it. It's not going to work, okay? Here's what you need to understand. And I'm one of those guys that believes that faith, family, and country are all uniquely linked, okay? We're all uniquely linked. But I also want to tell you something, that if you sit back and you think that if we just send one more Christian to Washington, D.C., that will fix it, it won't. That's one of the things that's cute about us as Christians, okay? And I say cute facetiously. It's cute about us that we believe that if we just send a Christian here or send a Christian there, things will get fixed. Like if we just had more Christians in Hollywood, things would be better. Well, if we just had more Christians as role models in professional sports, things would get better. Well, if we just have more Christian politicians, things will get better. Can I tell you something? Washington, D.C. is filled with Christians, men and women, some of the best you've ever met, just some of the best you've ever met. And then you think about the United States, over 70% of people here in the United States claim to be Christians. But would you say that our country is moving in a more Christian direction? I think I would stand back and look at it and say no, right? I would say no, we're not. So if the answer is not just sending another Christian here or sending another Christian there, what is the answer? Well, I'm going to tell you the hope for our country is right here in this room. It's right here. It's not in Washington, D.C. It's right here. Okay, it's in this front row. It's in that back row. It's with that lady who's wearing the American flag so beautifully right back there, right? It's with people like the coffee bunker. It's Captain Schaefer, or Chief Schaefer sitting back here, who was rocking out the drums earlier. Pretty amazing. I had no idea. He's the fire chief in Verdigris where I live. My brother's a firefighter. He's down here. I had no idea he could rock out on the drums, man. I'm gonna make some hay off of that, right? I'm gonna let everybody know you were rocking the drums. But I'm gonna tell you, the hope for our country is right here in this room. It's right here in this room. I'm gonna also tell you on the flip side, it could also be the despair for our country if we sit back and we do nothing. If we sit back and we do nothing. Friends, I'm gonna tell you that as Christians, our government, John Adams has a great quote. I'm not gonna give you the whole thing. But John Adams has a great quote about the Constitution. He says, the Constitution was put together for a moral and religious people, and that it's wholly inadequate for anybody else. Meaning that you were given liberty and freedom, and those ideas were to be stewarded with great morals and a religious perspective that helped you take advantage of that liberty and freedom in the right way. And that you've been given a ton of that liberty and freedom in the United States. And if it's outside of a moral and religious people, man, we're gonna see things kind of go the wrong direction. And so I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of that. And so I wanna tell you about some things today. If we wanna get back, if we want our country to move in the right direction, I think we've gotta focus in 3 areas. I think we gotta focus, number one, our faith has to become a priority again. Our faith has to become a priority. Our faith is breaking down. The priority of faith is not there right now. Right? And it's a generational thing. If you think about the baby boomers, if you poll their generation, and Barna Group has, over 70% of the baby boomers have some sort of founding or grounding in a Christian belief system. But you get down to my generation, right? The millennials, you get down to us, and that's just under 50%. So you're looking at over 20% drop just in a couple decades, right? So our faith is becoming less and less of a priority. It's a generational problem. It's not passing down. Right? It's not coming down. Family is the second thing. Family is no longer a priority. Family is no longer a priority. If you think, again, back to baby boomers, you think about what family looked like then, and you think about what family looks like now. There was a sociology professor that studied the 2000 census and then the 2008 and 2010 community survey, American Community Survey. And his conclusion was that there is no longer such a thing as a traditional American family. And I'm gonna tell you right now that kind of breaks my heart. And at the same time, we've seen some things come out of that have been incredibly encouraging. I'm gonna tell you right now, single moms are some of the most courageous people I've ever met, and I've met a lot of them in this job. Man, they have taken up the mantle. They're raising their kids. They're playing both roles. They're doing a ton of great things. And man, they're working and providing and raising kids on their own. It's an incredible thing. And there are single dads out there that are doing the same thing, right? But God created the family in a very specific way. I believe that men and women have very specific roles in the family, and the outcomes for children are determined on how well men and women fulfill those roles. And we've seen that. And it's not just an opinion, it's something that's been studied over and over and over again. Family, as family breaks down, society breaks down. And that's, man, it's directly tied to faith. So faith breaks down, family breaks down, and what's left? Country breaks down. Country breaks down. And so you look at it, again, back to the baby boomers, over 70% of them still believe that the United States of America is the greatest country in the world. They are patriotic folks. But then you get down into the millennial generation, my generation, and it's just barely 40% take pride in their country. Just barely 40% take pride in their country. Man, I'm gonna tell you right now, again, that's heartbreaking stuff. So something's happened. I was talking with Gary out in the parking lot earlier. Where are you, Gary? There you are. So I was talking with him earlier, and he said something that stuck out to me. He said, man, we've got generational problems. We've got generational issues. And I'm gonna tell you, that's the truth. He hit the nail on the head. We have generational problems. We have stuff that was believed at one time in the United States and is not making it down to the generations now. And what's happening is that as these generations move into, the folks that are going to be ruling our country and making decisions and serving in government and doing those kinds of things, and their beliefs of faith and family and country are different. And so the outcomes are going to be different, right? And as Christians, that should concern you. It should concern you. You should be looking at it saying, what do we need to do now to get our country moving forward in a godly direction? And I'm an acrostics guy. I'm one of those guys that I think really simply, so I need stuff to be very simple for me. So I'm gonna give you a couple of acrostics today. The first one is gonna be forward. Okay, that's the one we're gonna major on. FWD, okay, forward. That helps me remember stuff, okay? So you just kind of have to play with me here. So forward. If we wanna get our country moving forward in a more Christian, godly direction, we have to, number one, fully commit to your relationship with Christ. Fully commit to your relationship with Christ. Genesis 3, we all know Genesis 3 because it's the fall, right? It's where Adam and Eve, they make some terrible decisions, and the rest is history, literally, right? I mean, we're on a completely different path. But what I love about Genesis 3 is in verse 8 and 9. Verse 8 and 9, after the fall, Adam and Eve, they've sewn on some fig leaves, and they did what? What did they do next? They hid. Right? They hid from God. And so here you have God coming down, walking in the garden, calling out to Adam, saying, where are you? Where are you? And I just wonder if God is sitting around looking down at our country and looking at Christians specifically and asking the very same question. Where are you? Where are you, Christians? Not only not because you're not standing out boldly and publicly in your faith, but where are you in your relationship? Where are you in your relationship? Because I'm going to tell you, we think that we need to make bold stands publicly. I'm going to tell you, you need to make a bold commitment to a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, and that will spur everything else publicly, right? But it all starts with a relationship with Christ where he never has to ask, where are you? He knows you. He's in relationship with you. It's something that you're so committed that whenever you get up each day and you say, what do I need to do to make sure this day goes the way that I need it to? The answer is, I need to spend time with Christ. Whenever you look at your job and you say, what do I need to do to move ahead in my job and to get things done? The answer is, I need to spend time with Christ. Whenever you think about your family and you say, what is it that I need to do to make sure that my family is moving forward? The answer is, I need to spend time with Christ. Fully committed, completely committed, sold out relationship to Christ, right? Never again should he be asking, where are you? And so the question is, what does that look like on a daily basis? Well, it takes prioritizing that relationship. You got to prioritize the relationship. For me, and I've got a buddy of mine, Matt Ryden, sitting over here that serves on our staff. He's our digital director. He's one of the most, no kidding, he's the best digital guy in the country. And so we are blessed to have him on our team. But he's one of the best. He's absolutely committed to being the best in his faith, and not only in his faith, but also in his job. And he knows I'm crazy about setting goals, right? It's just something that I always do. I set goals for everything. I have to do it. Otherwise, I don't know how I'm going to navigate through a week. And so I set goals for my walk. I set goals for my walk with Christ. Why? Because it's a priority. I'm setting goals for everything else. Why don't I set goals for my walk with Christ? And so I told you I'm an acrostics person. I came up with sword. Okay, sword, because the Bible talks about the sword in a pretty powerful way, and I love Gladiator. It's one of my favorite movies, okay? So sword, right? It stuck out to me. So S is study. I have goals each week for what I'm going to study, how I'm going to study, how much time I'm going to study, what am I going to listen to, what am I going to put in. W is worship. I'm not a good singer. Pastor can attest to that. He was standing right in front of me. So worship for me isn't about singing, it's about encouragement. Who am I going to encourage this week? How am I going to encourage them this week? What's that going to look like? The O is outreach. How am I going to reach out and share the gospel of Jesus Christ? How am I going to reach out and build relationships with people so that we can move forward together in fellowship and relationship with Jesus Christ? R is reflection. That's prayer for me. How much time am I going to spend in prayer this week? What are my prayer goals? What do I need to have prayer circles around? What do I need to be focused on in my prayer life? And then D is devotion. What does devotion look like for me? It's about service, right? I lead our men's ministries, discipleship ministries, and young adults ministries at my church. And then I speak anywhere else that I can to try and share some of the hope that I have in Jesus Christ. So what am I going to do to serve, right? Devotion. So sword. I think that helps me stay on track for being fully committed in my relationship with Christ. So the W of forward is to win your family. Win your family. I think too often what happens is we get really focused on winning other people or making sure that we live in a way that brings other people in, and maybe we neglect the people that are closest to us. The other thing that we do is we might come to church on a Sunday or on a Wednesday, but then whenever we go home, church doesn't come home with us. And so we aren't winning our families at home. You want to know why there's a generational fall away from Christ? It's because we haven't been winning our families. We haven't been winning our families. And it's no fault. I don't look at the baby boomers and say, you guys did a bad job. I don't look at them and say that. What I say is we have a responsibility as men and as women, as husbands and wives, as moms and dads, to win our families, to encourage them to own their faith, not for it to be our faith that they're trying to carry forward, but for it to be their faith. Right? And we are supposed to be doing things in our family lives that point other members of our family to the importance and the priority of Jesus Christ. That's what's supposed to be happening. You look at Joshua. Joshua is one of my favorite guys. And in Joshua 4, it talks about now Joshua is leading the nation of Israel. He's going to be the one leading them into the promised land. He's taking them across the Jordan River. And before they go across the Jordan River, he talks to one member from each of the 12 tribes. And he says, when we go across the Jordan River, you're going to pick up 12 stones. Each one of you are going to pick one up, right? I know the water's going to be standing on both sides. You're going to want to stand around and look at that and be in awe of God, and I want you to do that. But you're going to pick up a stone and you're going to take it across the other side. And they looked at him and said, why? He said, because you're going to build a monument with these stones. And these stones are going to talk to the generations behind you about what God did here. They're going to talk to your children, and they're going to talk to your children's children about what God did here, right? You're going to build a monument. So here's my question for you guys. What are your monuments? What are your monuments in your life? That whenever your children look back and they look, what do they see that is a monument to them of your walk with Jesus Christ? What are your grandkids going to see as monuments in your life that point them back to Jesus Christ and the priority of Jesus Christ in your life? I've got a few of them, and so I'm just going to tell you what they are. Number one is my journal. Like, I know that whenever I pass away someday, my hope is that, I have lots of money and cool stuff that I can leave to my kids and it blesses them in some way. That'd be real nice. But man, what I'm most excited about is for them to be able to flip through my journals and for them to be thinking about the times in their life whenever we were having to make big decisions as a family, and for them to be able to see, that's how Dad went through that. That's how Dad went through that. I think that's a cool monument, right? And do I journal every day? I try, right? They're going to see that their dad isn't perfect in here as well, but it's going to be a monument of my faith and my relationship with Jesus Christ. Other monuments in my family's life, we have family verses, right? We have family verses. First one's Matthew 5:16. Let your light so shine before all men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. My kids know that. If you pull the string on Matthew 5:16, they're going to give it to you, right? Colossians 3:23 and 24, right? And whatever you do, do it heartily as unto the Lord, for you know that it's from the Lord you receive the reward of your inheritance, for you serve the Lord Christ. Pull the string, they're going to tell you that, right? Because I was really mean as a dad and I said, you have to learn that. No, because we sat down and we prayed about it and we talked about what verses would be good and we engaged them in the conversation and we talked about it and we decided that these were good things for our family to know. The other thing is, last acrostics, I promise, but for Sherman, I want them to know what being a Sherman is. Your last name's Sherman. There's responsibility that comes with that. So what is being a Sherman all about? Well, number one, selfless. Number two, honesty. Honest. Number three, encouraging. Number four, respectful. Number five, we're motivated people. Number six, we're affectionate. And number seven, we never give up, right? And so I want them to know that and own that. So these are just small monuments that we're placing in their life so that whenever they look back, they say, wow, that meant something to my family. This faith thing, this relationship with Jesus Christ, it's real, and I want it. And so my kids aren't perfect, but they're pretty dang awesome, right? And they are doing a good job walking out their faith at 9 and 11. And man, and I'm right there trying to help them on through it, right? Trying to do the best I can. The last thing that I would tell you, the D, and Mary mentioned this earlier, it's kind of one of the things that spurred her ministry, is to do life together. Do life together. And I didn't say do church together. I didn't say do church together. I said you got to do life together. I promise you that is the heart of your pastor and his wife, is that they create a family here that does life together. right? And so you should be, and your hope should be, and your expectation should be as Christians that you are in life together with other Christians, that you are moving forward together, right? That it's not something that we do on our own. Mary talked about how veterans come back from war and they are lost because they don't have their family. They're looking for purpose. They're trying to transition. They've been in charge of tens and hundreds of millions of dollars of equipment and the responsibility for the freedom of our country, and then they come back and they're looking for a job, right? If you just came off of the battlefield and you had that kind of responsibility, and now you're coming home and you're trying to find where you fit now, boy, you need family to provide that support, right? And we know this as Christians, that we're in a spiritual war, and that each and every day there are attacks, and that each and every day things are difficult, and you need each other. And if you think that you can come to church on a Sunday or come to church on a Wednesday, punch your card and leave and be disconnected from the church family, okay. I'm going to tell you that that's selfish, because it's not just about what you need from your church family. It's what your church family needs from you. Because what you have been designed and created and gifted uniquely for a very specific purpose that plugs into this church and plugs into the kingdom of God. And so if you are missing out on the fellowship and the blessings from other people, that's one thing. But to think about you robbing the church or your church family or others from your experiences, your stories, your gifts, man, that should humble you a little bit too. And so if we want to get through this life, if we want to move forward in a way that honors God and moves the kingdom of God forward, then we got to do it together. We've got to be doing life together. Man, in politics, one of the things about politics is that everybody wants to be your friend, right? Because suddenly you are kind of important, and you might have some power, or you might have some influence, and so everybody wants to be your friend. Well, guess what? You can't be everybody's friend. It's just impossible. There's not enough time, right, Pastor? There's just not enough time. You want to love people, you want to be as best as you can to everybody, but you can't be everybody's friend. So sometimes you've got to make choices. You've got to make choices about where you're going to invest, right? Where are you going to invest your time, your effort, your energy, your love in relationships? And so I've had to make some of those choices. They're tough choices. But I look at the men at my church as a place that I want to invest. Like that, I want those relationships because I know I'm running with people that want to run in those relationships. I'm moving forward with people that want to move forward in those relationships. And I can influence and impact and encourage and build families there. I want to surround myself with those people. And so that means I have to say no to some other people, right? Some other people that might not share the same things, same beliefs that I do. They're still great people. They're still valuable. But I'm putting a priority on doing life together with the people that I know I need to influence and help, and I know can influence and help me so that we can move the kingdom of God forward, right? We've got to be moving forward. So my encouragement to you today, guys, is that you matter, right? That you absolutely matter. And that this country, man, it is worth every bit of effort that we can put forward as Christians. It is worth it. It is absolutely worth it. You live in the best country in the world. Okay, you live in the best country in the world. And I want to tell you something, Ronald Reagan, we could have just shut it down after Ronald Reagan spoke. We could have honored Coffee Bunker and we could have left because the man was just incredible with his words, right? And one of the things that he said that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction, that it's not passed down to our children through their bloodstream, that it has to be fought for, it has to be protected, and that if we do not do this, if we do not own that responsibility, that someday we'll be sitting around telling our children's children what it was like to live in the United States where men were free once, right? And so what we've got to be willing to do and what we've got to say as Christians is that's not going to happen. We believe in this country. We believe in the sacrifices that were made on behalf of this country. We believe that this country was put together by God. That it's no coincidence that the people that founded this country were pursuing religious freedom. It's no coincidence that in the 1730s and 1740s, you had the Great Awakening led by George Whitefield, just a couple decades ahead of independence for our country. Those aren't coincidences. And God has a plan and a purpose for our nation. And as Christians, we can't just sit back and wait for Jesus to come. We got to get involved. We got to be engaged. Okay? We got to move forward. So thank you so much for your time. Pastor Goins, turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Gabe. Appreciate it. Wow. Fantastic. I love those kind of things. I love that inspiration. I love being motivated to be the very best person I can be. You guys know that's what we're here for. We're here to motivate you guys and to tell you the truth that's found in the Word of God so that we can leave this place and go make a difference in the world. And that's what I want you guys to do. I want you to go make a difference in the world that you are in. As I was just recently in Washington, D.C. at this prayer breakfast, I had told the story that I thought was kind of interesting, and as I researched it, I found out there are several stories that parallel this. But there was a statue of Jesus. I've told you guys this before. There was a statue of Jesus in South Africa during apartheid that this church was attacked by the military, by the police. And through the process of that church being attacked, many of the relics there and many of the statues were destroyed. The altar was destroyed. There was a large statue of Jesus that was toppled over. And they just went through and tried to disrupt this church as best they could. At the end of the day, they went back in and tried to piece things together, and they took this large statue of Jesus and they propped it back up. And it had been broken. There were some things that were missing on it. They constructed it as best they can, and the last thing they had to do was reconstruct the hands, because it was a large statue of Jesus with hands outstretched that at the bottom of it said, "Come unto me." And the church fathers thought, well, we want to do something different, and so they didn't reconstruct the hands. They left the hands gone, and on the bottom they changed the inscription, and now it says, "Christ has no hands but us." Christ has no hands but us. And I thought, what an unbelievable picture that is in my mind of thinking that Christ has no body. He chose to invest His presence in us, the church, to be His body to go to the world. He has no hands. He chose to let us be His hands extended to a world that so desperately needs to see the real thing and so desperately needs to feel the touch. When you touch someone, when you put your arm around them, when you hug them, when you shake their hand, you do it in the name of Christ. You are His hands that are reaching into the heart of that person and touching them. We can go into this world and make a difference. We never have to lift a gun or a sword or against someone, but we can go in the name of love. We can go in the name of Christ and love the people who are around us. That's what let's do this New Year's. I mean this holiday season, this Independence Day, 4th of July. Let's go and make a difference in the people that we come in contact with. All right? Are you with me? Stand with me, would you please? Lord Jesus.